am Bill Nye, the reporter guy from QXRP News, who have some very important historical figures. We have scientifically brought them back from the dead. Here we have Otto von Bismarck, the Prime Minister of Prussia. Also, we have Napoleon III, and a very special guest, one of my personal favorites, William I, Habsburg of Duke of Austria. All three of these men are Junkers. Junkers are German noblemen or aristocrats, especially a member of the Prussian aristocracy. I'd like to give a little background before we begin the Q&A. In the year 1848, the first attempt of unifying Germany was underway. On May 18th, the German National Assembly met at Frankfurt, Maine, representing the first elected assembly. However, this idea failed due to the government being flawed and lacking strong executive power. Next, the second attempt was Otto von Bismarck.
The first effort at striking some form of economic unification between the German Confederation members came with the 1834 establishment of the Zollverein Customs Union. The main issue was the idea of a greater Germany versus the idea of a smaller Germany.
Hello, Mr. Bill Nye, the reporter guy.
Hi, Mr. von Bismarck. So tell me, were you an advocate of the idea of the smaller Germany or the greater Germany? And could you explain what each of these things are?
Well, personally, I was an advocate for the idea of a smaller Germany, which was a unified Germany that would exclude Austria, whereas the idea of a greater Germany would include the Kingdom of Austria.
I hear you're an expert in realpolitik. Mind explaining what that is, and how it did influence the unification of Germany?
Well, realpolitik is politics based primarily on power and on practical material factors and consideration, rather than explicit ideological notions or moral or ethical premises. We reached unification by the force of Prussia. We enforced from the top down, meaning that there was not an organic movement that was supported fully by the popular classes, but instead was a product of Prussian foreign policies.
I see. Now, who did you ally with in the First War?
Well, in the First War of German unification was in 1862 against the Danes. I allied with Austria to protect the interests of Holstein, a member of the German Confederation.
Could you discuss the third act of German unification?
The third and final act of German unification was the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 to 1871, orchestrated by myself in order to draw from Western German states into alliance with the North German Confederation. With the French defeat, the German Empire was proclaimed in January of 1871, a year I remember well, in the Palace of Versailles, France. From that point forward, foreign policy of the German Empire was made in Berlin, with the German Kaiser, who was also the King of Prussia, accrediting the ambassadors of foreign nations. Relations were severed when the U.S. Declared war upon Imperial Germany in 1917.
Well then. Thank you, Mr. Bismarck. Now
Thanks
let's go to
for having me.
Napoleon III!
I'd like to take a moment to explain the Danish War. In 1862, William I appointed Otto von Bismarck Chief Minister of Russia. Bismarck immediately began to build up the army, and he claimed that other ethnic Germans admired Prussia for her power. The year after Bismarck's appointment, Prussia entered the Danish War against Denmark. When Denmark decided to annex Schleswig, a duchy with many Germanic people, Bismarck joined forces with Austria in order to disguise his intent to gain territory. Together, in 1864, they attacked Denmark. With Prussia's modern equipment, the war was won so easily and so quickly. Holstein was given to Austria and Schleswig to Prussia. This united a number of people of German descent in Schleswig with Prussia. Immediately after acquiring Schleswig and Holstein, Prussia and Austria began to argue over rights of passage to the territories. In order to reach Holstein, Austrians had gone through Prussian territory. Arguments increased and tempers rose. While Bismarck pretended to be aiming for peace, he was, in fact, egging on each side. Knowing that Austria could find no allies in Europe, Bismarck lured Italy to aid Prussia with the promise of Ventimiglia and made imitations to France of possibly gaining Luxembourg if they would not join the war. Bismarck thus isolated Austria, intimidated them, and prepared Prussia for yet another war. In 1866, Prussia and Austria went to war. The Prussians were forced to fight against the smaller Germanic states, as well as they were friendlier towards Austria. Prussia once again won quickly and made a peace treaty in a hurry. Several German states were annexed to Prussia, and from this Bismarck was able to create the North German Confederation. This was comprised of the northern German states of Prussia, but excluded the southern states in Austria. The Confederation had a constitution as guidelines, and it even made an attempt for democracy by creating a lower house elected by universal manhood of suffrage, the Reichstag.
And now we have my good friend, Napoleon III.
It's a pleasure to be here and to be alive again.
Very funny. For what reason did you, now Emperor, keep the National Assembly around?
Well, I kept the National Assembly around to widen the base of support within the government. I tried to entice the educated higher class to participation in the elections. We had the elections every 6 years. I only kept it around because I could keep a strong influence on it. Boo. Oops. Yes, it was a bit selfish, I may admit.
What led you to expand the powers of the National Assembly in the 1860s?
In the 1860s, problems from Italy and Prussia rising in power led to some turn and offer criticism towards my rule. From this, middle-class liberals who always didn't like this authoritative rule spoke out with surprising effectiveness. I was sensitive to the public's mood, so I responded so that I could keep power in France. I adapted myself and thus expanding the powers of the National Assembly. I had to do what I had to do in order to keep power within my range.
What do you consider to be your greatest success and why?
My greatest success was in the economy of France. Under my government, they encouraged investment banks and railroads that would lead to industrialization in the country. They also started programs of public works that included rebuilding the entire city of Paris. I even regulated pawn shops, supportive credit unions, and provided better housing for the urban workers. I also allowed unions and strikes in the 1860s. I felt these positive reforms would satisfy the people and lead to economic success in France. Also, most of all, my satisfied people kept me in power.
Wonderful, darling.
Thank you.
It's happy to have you here. It was nice. Good of you to make it.
Thanks.
Now let's introduce Mr. William Habsburg. So, William, were you in favor of German unification?
Yes, I was in favor of German unification. It would result in quite a bit of power going to our country for a better economy, better trade, and much more.
What is nationalism and how did it affect German unification?
Nationalism was the loyalty to your own country, and it affected German unification because nationalism leads to deep thought and belief that you are the same by language and by culture, you should have the land to represent that. For one, a lot of Europeans were of the same nationality, but did not have the boundaries by name of land or sea.
This is very interesting. Thank you for your time. And now here's an open question for anybody in the audience or any of our special guests today. What is industrialization? How does it apply to German unification? And how many nation states were in Germany before it was unified? Bismarck, do you have an answer for this?
I do, Mr. Bill Nye, the reporter guy. The process in which a country or area undergoes to create factories and the ability to manufacture products at a quickened rate is industrialization, and it applied to German unification for the fact that it allowed Germany unifying into one allowed it to take place. As for the second question, there were more than 500 different nation states that unified into one Germany. So thank you for the ability to answer that question. I hope I have informed you.
Yeah, thank you for your time. I'm Tyler.
The unification of Germany between 1862 and 1871 was a result of the 3 wars fought by Prussia against Denmark, Austria, and France. The sense of nationalism that ensued caused unification of the German people, as did the feeling of superiority to other ethnic groups, such as the Slavs. These wars of German unification showed the people that in order to industrialize and make profits, as well as becoming more powerful in Europe, the German states would have to stick together and support each other. Despite differences in religion, North and South Germany were finally able to work together to achieve the common goal of advancing the glory of ethnic Germans. Bismarck's policy of sneakily convincing the German people to work together against other forces eventually aided the unification of the German Empire, thus resulting in the unification of Germany. Thank you for watching and have a great night.